All right. Good morning, everyone. We are live right now. I got Liam, investor agent in the Pittsburgh market, and we got Curtis, PE turned RE. So, morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning,
Yeah,
guys.
yeah. So I think this is going to be a fun episode. We're going to have a little bit of fun with this. So Curtis is in the Washington area, and he has what, two properties now, or two house hacks. Yeah,
Yep.
and he is starting to realize maybe he is getting priced out a little bit of his market, and maybe he's looking to venture out. And we have Liam, who is a rock star agent in Pittsburgh, and his goal today is to try and convince Curtis on why he should be investing in Pittsburgh. So, welcome, fellas. So, who
Thank you for
wants to
having
go?
us on.
Curtis, do you want to maybe touch on maybe why you possibly are looking at different areas, or Liam, do you want to go first and pitch Pittsburgh a little bit?
Yeah, I was hoping Curtis could go first.
Okay.
Just like tell me a little bit about his situation, like where he's at, and then why he's
Mhm.
maybe considering making a move, and then kind of like what his typical investment strategy is and like what he prioritizes.
Smart,
Okay.
smart.
Get
All
as
right.
much
So
info as I can. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. So I'm like 45 minutes south of Seattle. It's kind of more on the expensive side here. So I started in 2022. I got my first duplex there. Duplex at the time was about 440. Just did the 3.5% down. Kind of lived in that one room that didn't have a shower or a kitchen. Saved up, got a triplex last year for 500, and that's kind of on the lower end for triplexes now. And so, kind of as I look towards either doing house hack number three or trying to find that third property, um, prices have kind of gone up. And to add to that, the way that you would typically get rent up is with the binder strategy, where you get your tenants to ask you to raise the rent. However, we now have rent control, so rent can't go above 10%. So you kind of have to kick the tenants out or find ways to get them out. Be it you're gonna occupy that unit, you're gonna get family there, you're gonna rehab it. Right? There's ways to get them out, so like eventually that rate can kind of go up, but it's not going to be nearly as effective as like the binder was.
Okay, makes sense. And
So
you're
it's
just
easy
doing,
then. You're gonna just
yeah.
switch already. It sounds like you're out of there.
You're making the
Hold
case
on,
for me.
hold on. So when I bought the duplex, I told you the purchase price was 440. It's now probably worth five something, 530, 540, right? And I've done really no work to it except floors and paint.
When did you buy that one?
2022,
Okay.
uh, towards the end of it.
Okay. Gotcha. And when you're house hacking, are you completely living in one unit? Or are you still like renting out a room or like shacked up in some way?
Yeah. So the first one, I kind of rented out all the possible space. Right. I
Hmm.
didn't have a shower or a kitchen there. And then the one that I'm at now, I have my own unit. I turned a one bedroom into a two like bedroom, but
Hmm.
I'm finding it's harder to find a good like roommate than it
Hmm.
is a good tenant
Definitely.
because I don't want to live with pets.
Yeah.
And like I've had like nine people that like fit the criteria. They're perfect. 700 credit scores. They're higher than the income like requirement, but they have cats. I'm like, oh, that's gonna smell.
Hmm.
The fuck is wrong with a cat? Wait, hold on. No, this is the first time hearing this though about you not wanting to live with pets. I didn't know that.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And, you cat people think that cats don't have a smell, but they do, and I don't want that.
I I'm not a cat person. I like my cats. There's a difference.
I became a cat person when I got with my wife.
Oh,
So now
see?
it is what it
Exactly.
is.
Mm.
I
All
like
right,
being
Well,
with it.
Liam.
Yeah.
Liam has a good excuse. Mark, I don't know what your excuse is.
All
All right,
right.
Chris.
Is
Well,
this gonna
that's
be hard, you think, Liam? Do you think it's gonna be a challenge right now?
I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, but I think I have a good case to make. But Pittsburgh, it kind of makes its own case for itself. But that's good info, though, Curtis. I mean, and do you get pretty good tenants there? Like generally, like I imagine it's a pretty deep, like nice area.
Yeah. and knock on wood, but like the tenants that I've picked have been phenomenal.
Yeah, that's a nice luxury too. I would say if you were going to invest in another market, like what would you be prioritizing? Like cash flow purely, or kind of like
Mm.
ease of management, great tenants, like appreciation as well? Like if
It's
on a
kind of
sliding scale there, but
yeah, it's kind of interesting because I'm kind of like okay, like the values of the properties here kind of gone up. So I'm like, okay, well, do I really need another appreciation type play because I already have that
good
here?
point. Yeah.
But it's kind of nice to see the numbers rise up so fast because Washington has been the highest appreciating market in the country the last 30 years. And
Hmm.
so now if that trend continues, great, right? But I think cash flow eventually will help me leave my job, not necessarily the appreciation. So at some point, I have to find the balance. Now, I will
Yeah.
say that the tenants here are awesome, right? Like I can set the the credit score to 700 and
Hmm.
have no problem to fill. Um, like
Makes
the
sense.
like so if there's another market like that where it's going to be easier with the tenants, then I'd be open to it. Yeah.
And you're self-managing, I assume.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh, it is nice. I mean, it's completely different than like, the Washington area. Like it is like one of the most affordable cities in the country. Like it's completely on the opposite end of the scale there. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're getting steady appreciation, but it's not like a boom and bust market, which I like because I know that like they're not going to bring hundreds of units to market and, things are going to fall through the roof or like
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of steady up into the right appreciating market, but we kind of have those fundamentals in place now for us to have like a ton of runway over the next 10 or 20 years. Like we've kind of transitioned from that old steel manufacturing city to more of like a higher education city, medical, tech, financial services. Like, so we have a lot of diversity in our job sectors.
Mm-hmm.
And now that like affordability in general is such an issue around the country, I think there's more focus and more upside to these cities that are more affordable in like the Rust Belt area or whatever. And I think Pittsburgh's well positioned to kind of capitalize on that with everything we have going on here. But yeah, it's a very affordable city. Like you can find cash flow like pretty easily here. Like 1% rule in like most neighborhoods is possible, except for like the high end areas
Mm-hmm.
where you'll get great appreciation, but the numbers on a month to month basis won't work out so well. But even like a lot of our like B plus neighborhoods that are really nice, you can get great tenants in. You can still get 1% rule, which is like hard to find nowadays.
It, interesting. So, because when I hear affordable 1% rule, I think of like Gary, Indiana, where it's
Mhm.
like, well, yeah, of course the numbers were
Yeah,
work there.
obviously, right? Yeah.
And so, is it kind of like that type of deal?
Not at all. So we're actually at the top. We get the combination of like very affordable living, like low cost of living, but high
Mm-hmm.
quality of living. Like we're
Mm-hmm.
at the top of all these lists nowadays. If you look up any article for Pittsburgh, it's like at the top of the list for quality of living, quality of life. Like you get the big city amenities and like sports and like, lots
Mm-hmm.
of things and fun things to do. It's got like a nice culture to it. It's safe, but also the cost is not like crazy that you might see in other cities that have those same amenities. So you kind of get the best of both worlds in low cost of living, but high quality of living.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very neighborhood by neighborhood. Like we have a good diversity, like in you can kind of diversify your investment strategy within Pittsburgh. Like there's different neighborhoods and different sections of the city that you can prioritize ease of management and great tenants and appreciation, but there's other areas where you can prioritize like, oh, I want some more cash flow. So even within the same city, you can diversify a lot. But you made a good point where it's like you might be covered on appreciation for now. You've got two, I think, two house
Yeah.
hacks. Yeah, like you might be covered on those two. So now you can look somewhere that's going to have more of a cash flow play. But you don't, yeah, Gary, Indiana, maybe like quality living as isn't as great. So like
Yeah.
the cash flow you get there might not be as worth it as somewhere like Pittsburgh, where you can get the cash flow, still get steady appreciation, good tenants, and general ease of management. Don't have to worry about like maybe you're in a gritty city or gritty area as much.
Now,
I wanted to say what's up to Sam, Invest to Wealth. Flavio's here, Big Val, Jim's here. Frank, old guy REI, he is a Steelers fan, so he does say go Steeler. Or so I don't know if that's a requirement because Curtis is a Bears fan. So
well, I'm a Bills fan, so it's like sacrilegious here in Pittsburgh. Jeremy always makes fun of me for it, but
dude, they just signed Aaron Rodgers. I was giving Jeremy shit the other day, but but Andy's here. Andy also, well, he doesn't. So the other thing behind Curtis and pets is he doesn't like birds. He hates birds.
I hate birds.
And somebody was asking, what if they had chickens as pets? Would you let them have Curtis?
Was that Flavio?
Yeah.
Oh, man, no.
So Flavio is also in Washington. He's always talking shit that you need a vest to invest in, a bulletproof vest to go to Gary or Pittsburgh. But Jim, who's in California, he's also interested in possibly investing in Pittsburgh, but he says doing some research, there's a ton of stuff to do around the state, all over Pennsylvania, which is not a far drive from Pittsburgh. So yeah, it's another good point. So yeah, keep going, Liam, trying to pitch Curtis or vice versa or whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I got to touch on this one since you mentioned the rent increases and stuff, but it is generally a very landlord friendly state and city as well. Like it's middle of the road. Like you're not going to run into any massive issues in terms of like, God forbid you got to evict somebody or whatever. It's a pretty easy process to go through. So, I mean, that's very important. Like we take it for granted here, but we get people who reach out from California or Washington or whatever, or we have some Canadian clients where it's like, it's kind of like not feasible to invest there anymore. It doesn't really make sense because they can't manage it properly. But here in Pittsburgh, like we are in a more landlord friendly city and state, which is nice. So it makes it easier to operate in general.
So do you have like an example of what does a eviction look like? Is it 90 days and they're out, or
sometimes less than that, actually? Like sometimes it can be 30 to 60 days. It depends on the municipality. So there's the city of Pittsburgh, and then there's some other municipalities. Like I had to go to I was helping out a contractor that I helped manage some properties for, and I had to go to an eviction hearing for him in Ambridge. And I like sat in front of the judge, and it was super easy. The judge, he was like, okay, he looked at everything. He's like, all right, we'll sign the thing. So it can be less than that, even like less than 90 days, 30 to 60 days, depending on the municipality and the situation. But generally, yeah, like call it 60 days. I think you can get somebody out, maybe less. So pretty simple process. Like they lay it out, the rules you need to follow or process you need to go through. You follow those steps and you're kind of good. So that's, I mean, a huge benefit too for someone like you who, it's not as simple to raise the rent or, there's no rent control here, which is nice as well. So, and good rent demand still, like if you have to, get somebody out, you shouldn't have a huge issue getting it filled back up. The further we go, so if someone's reaching out for cash flow, there's a few different areas we would typically say to look at. A lot of times you can get real low prices and great cash flow, maybe like 30 to 40 minutes outside of like downtown. So we transact a lot of like more cash flow centric deals in those areas. Like there's a single family house a client is looking at right now. It's 94,000, pretty much like fully turnkey, rent ready. It's 4-bedroom, 1-bath, I believe. We'll rent for like 12 or 1,300. And that's an Ambridge, which is a good little neighborhood we like, about 30 minutes outside of downtown. So, and that's the one I actually went to the eviction hearing for that one time, that same municipality. But there's properties like that in little neighborhoods like that outside of the city. If you're more focused on cash flow and a cheaper entry price, those are definitely available to you. But then also at the same time, if you want something more in like a B-class area, like it sounds like you like 2 to 4 unit properties, like duplex, triplex, fourplex type things.
Well, that's the only way the numbers work where
Yeah.
I'm at. Unless you do like a ADU or DADU type thing,
Hmm.
because now that's becoming really popular and ways that people are able to make huge spreads um, over here, right? Because if you can build it for 300 and sell it for six,
Hmm.
well, there's the spread.
Yeah. Yeah. We like the 2 to 4s here. We transact a ton of those. Like when Jeremy and I house hack, it's, 2 to 4s all day long. Um, so like even if you want to find like a duplex in like a B class area, maybe in the like 200 to 300,000 range, uh, you know, those areas you'll get great tenants, generally lower turnover. They'll keep it in good shape, and you can still hit or exceed that 1% rule. So a lot of these deals we see like maybe have a short stabilization period where maybe the rents are a little bit under market,
Mhm.
but within 6 to 12 months, it's just a matter of turning over the units and getting them back up to market, and then you're maybe exceeding that 1% rule and have a good stabilized cash flowing property in a great area. So you can kind
What
of get
is the
those.
so you had said to turn it over quick.
Mhm.
Well, I've heard from other out of state like investors that a tenant leaves and then their PM takes forever to get the project either done or they get the unit filled and then they're paying every
Mhm.
month, eating into that nice cash flow that you were just like talking about.
Yep.
So does that happen in Pittsburgh?
It can, but that's why, I mean, I've had people reach out sometimes, and the reason they invest in Pittsburgh is because they have like Jeremy and I on the ground. Like they're looking at a couple, maybe they're looking at Columbus or Detroit or whatever, and Pittsburgh. But the reason they come to us or come to Pittsburgh is because they know they have a great team. And that's actually the thing I would say to you is like, if you're investing out of state, the number one thing is having a great team on the ground. Like that is the difference maker. So like with you saying like the turnovers, we would make sure that we recommend like a great contractor for you who, I typically don't use the in-house construction teams for management companies when you're doing turnovers because they just take a little bit longer. If you think about it, if they manage 100 units, they have maintenance they're doing out all the time on those 100 units. They might just take a little bit longer to get to like a renovation, depending on the company. But I would typically say have a contractor in place who can kind of jump right on that. You're kind of coordinating with them to do the rental repairs that are needed. So then you can kind of get it right back up on market as quickly as possible rather than being at the whim of the property management company. So like I would say that, if you have somebody you know is moving out in 30 or 60 days, you already have a contractor in mind that, someone referred to you, like one of us have referred to you that we have worked with that do like the same contractors we refer are the ones who work on our own personal deals. They would kind of help you coordinate that, get it turned over as quickly as possible, and then get it leased up. So it can be made a simple and seamless process. It just comes down to like operating efficiently, having the people in place so you don't have as much downtime.
Mhm.
So I just want to say, Val, I think he's talking about the pet issues, or maybe he's saying everybody's got animals. You need to get over that hill for sure. You leave
It's a
money and
huge thing now.
you
Yeah.
leave money on the table.
Yeah.
Charge a pet fee. So yeah.
Yeah, so every tenant that I have has a pet.
Just not the
So
one you
like
want to live in. Yeah.
just not the unit that I'm in because I
That's
didn't
fair.
want to open my door and see Mr. Fluffers right there, you
Wait,
know?
okay. So you would rather live without a shower than live with a pet. Like that's where you're drawing the line. Like for you, it's the pet.
It's
You
the
can go
pet.
without a. Okay. Well. Okay.
That's
Okay.
hilarious.
Uh, the Jim also chimes in, and so he's also been talking with Liam and Jeremy. So he says, yes, Liam and Jeremy's accessibility has been awesome. So back to Liam's point about having boots on the ground, a team.
So important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
kind of what I'm trying to do too. I'm trying to build this relationship where we have these boots on the ground and people that we can reach out to. And if we have a bigger group of investors, then when we come to Liam or Jeremy or even Alex and we say, hey, we got so and so needs this job done, we have a little more clout to us, right? We're not coming as like one person with one property right now. Where this one might bump us a little bit more to to the head of the line, because you're like, okay, we help, we're helping him, but in reality, we're helping the whole group in a sense, because now they're going to hear like, oh, this guy did a good job, or they handled our rehab quicker or whatnot. So
Yeah,
that's kind of
mutually
my
beneficial relationship. Yeah. Yep.
If you guys have anything, or do you want to get to Andy's question real quick? Do you guys have questions for each other right now, or
Curtis, anything from you? Like, what's your apprehension, I guess, like going not just to Pittsburgh, but any out of state market?
I'm here.
Well,
You can say me if you want, but
the thing is like what I've been doing has worked well here,
Mhm.
and so it's kind of like, well, if it's not broke, why do I need to fix it? And like all the relationships that I've been cultivating have been here, and
Mhm.
so I don't want to say that's like a waste, because it's not, right? Because I still own here and my community is still here, but it's like, okay, well, if I divert funds to go to Pittsburgh, could an opportunity pop up here and me not have the cash for?
Yeah, that's a good point. I would say maybe just keep the stakes a little bit lower, like look for something at a cheaper purchase price that's still a good property and will cash flow, but maybe you're not going to like the 250 or $300,000 mark quite yet. Maybe it's a $100,000 single family or $150,000 duplex, that's going to cash flow well, where you're well positioned. You still got to look out for like ease of management and tenant base and stuff like that, but keeping the stakes a little bit lower so you're not losing out on any opportunities that may come up back home.
Mhm.
So Andy is another. I don't know what is with the big guys. So Curtis is a football player, played football in college. Andy's another big dude. He's in Ohio, but they don't like birds and chickens for some reason. So Andy is deathly afraid of chickens. We can go into that one day. But he's asking, does Pittsburgh have ordinances or zoning not allowing farm animals like chickens? I know a lot more people that have chickens for fresh eggs. I've always lived in a rural area, never city life. So I don't know if you know about that, Lee.
I don't know about that. I would imagine like the municipalities outside the city though that are a bit more like suburban and rural don't have an issue with that. You could probably throw a chicken coop up and not have it be a big deal. Maybe right in the city, maybe not so much, but I would
See,
imagine, yeah.
it's the rooster that's the problem.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Neighbors might not like that very much, but I would think like in the more suburban kind of areas, it's not
Mhm.
an issue.
And this may blow your mind a little bit, Curtis, or even some of the listeners. And I know Liam, I think he may have just closed on it or sold it. But so Brian, who's also in the one rental at a time community, he saw this deal also. I know he passed on it, but I think it was like a 2% cash or a 2% deal. What was it, a fourplex maybe? But it might be a little bit more management intensive, like you said, the area tenant wise.
Yep.
But as far as a return, it's almost like a 2% deal.
They're
Right?
out there. Yeah. I mean, sometimes like 1% rule is pretty easy to find still. Um, I think Jeremy got started in like 2016, where like 2% deals were just sitting on the market to pick up like crazy. But we see them every now and then, hit the market. Uh, yeah, there's a trade off though. Like you might get some great cash flow, but maybe, it's going to be a little bit more management intensive. So you just keep that in the back of your head when you're buying, is like, if I'm doing that, I'm going to make my units like above average for that area, because it kind of helps you filter for the best possible tenants that area has to offer, even though it's maybe a little bit more C-class management intensive. I'll just make my units a little over renovate my units a little bit so you can still get great tenants for that area. Maybe have less like maintenance and repairs over time. So it makes ongoing like management a little bit easier, but you can still benefit from those great numbers that property has to offer. So it's not inherently a reason not to buy a place if it's in more C-class area or a little bit more management intensive. It's kind of like a give and take. You kind of look at a property on a case by case basis and say, is this extra cash flow I'm getting going to be worth it on this one? Or should I look for something else that's maybe a little bit more updated, or I can update and force a little bit of value and kind of preemptively make management a little bit easier on myself. But that's kind of something we look at on a case by case basis. Like when we send properties out to clients, we almost like pitch the property in a way where it's like, this is kind of the play on this one. Like I would renovate these units to this standard, just screen tenants really well. But will kind of make the pitch in a way where it's like, this is the play on this property in particular.
So if Pittsburgh is so great, how are these deals just laying around on the MLS?
So I would say that one of the reasons Pittsburgh hasn't totally popped off yet on a national level, which it kind of is now, especially because Bigger Pockets talks about it a lot. It's like coming up on a bunch of their podcasts. They're touching on it. But our population growth was negative for a long time. I think just last year, actually, we went positive. We added like 3,000 or 3,500 residents to the city of Pittsburgh, which was like huge news. But for a long time, it was negative. And one of the first metrics that a lot of these national investors look at is population growth. They want to see a city is adding residents because that correlates to appreciation over time. But if you dug into the numbers, we actually have Allegheny County, which is the county Pittsburgh is in, is one of the oldest counties in the country. So we just had like a lot of older residents dying off every year, and it kind of skewed the numbers. But when you dug into it, there's a slew of like younger professional type of people moving to the city. So those numbers have been positive for a few years, I would venture to say. But just last year the numbers just came out and we added some residents finally. But I think that's one of the things that has kept Pittsburgh off of like the national radar. So like big national investors haven't quite kind of picked up on it yet, that Pittsburgh is like a growing city and there's like a long runway and the numbers are good here and it's worth investing in. So that's a big piece of it, I think. And also just there's just certain pockets of the city that haven't fully gentrified or transitioned yet. So you can still find deals, and it takes such a like street by street, block by block knowledge of the city, because it's like the furthest thing from a grid layout. It's very hilly here. So it's not as simple as like, seeing a property at a certain price and buying it. Like there's so much more nuance, which is again why like boots on the ground and somebody with like really good knowledge of the areas is really important, because it kind of filters for people who know the areas really well, and it kind of adds like a little bit of an edge. When you see these properties pop up on the MLS, it's like, oh, that's a good one because that particular section of that street or that block is actually like pretty good for that area and can be worth investing in,
So Jim was saying send him that 2% rule deal, but I think it just closed, right? You just closed on it, right? You sold it, right? Or no?
I don't know. That might have been Jeremy.
Oh, okay.
Maybe.
I think
there was one I was looking at. I was actually going to bring it up as an example if needed, but it was a fourplex. Actually, it's like a couple streets over from where I live. Like I'm in again, street by street. I'm in a great residential street here, like near Oakland, where University of Pittsburgh is. But like you go several blocks up and it's like a little bit more gritty, some more housing blight. But there's a fourplex not far from me, for $250K, I think. It was listed incorrectly. It said all 3-bedroom units. Really, they were 2-bedroom units, but still the numbers were great on that. It would probably gross like $4,000 a month in rents, probably more actually. And, $250,000 purchase price. That's a great cash flow deal. And I think this area has good appreciation upside as well. Met the tenants. The tenants were super nice. So that was like one I was maybe going to bring up as an example of something that could be good. Yeah. But yeah, those deals are out there.
Before we maybe look into that deal, or if Curtis has any questions, I just want to say what's up to Charles McCune stopping by. They have a YouTube channel, Parents, so go check that out. I'll put that in the chat soon. But Jim also mentions maybe one of the things that people maybe are leery of Pittsburgh is the age of the homes. So for some people, that's it's not for everyone. Some of them do require more work, but I think Liam and Jeremy has also touched on previous lives. It's just, even with the tenant thing, right? It's just something you prepare for, right? Maybe the homes are older, so your reserves compared to like another market might have to just be a little bit higher because you might have a little more maintenance or upkeep and whatnot. Or like Jim, his strategy is he wants to find something where he can take it down to the studs and basically rebuild it or rehab it that way. So he knows everything is new in place, and he has that contractor background. So that's kind of what he's focusing on. And Andy says, would you charge a pet fee for chickens? Just curious. I know most charge 50 to 75 per animal. So maybe Curtis, since you have the bird thing, would you charge for chickens?
The fact that tenant even has a bird, they may be getting non-renewal. No, I'm just joshing. But so okay, so do you charge for like the egg, or do you charge for the baby chicken? So I just think it kind of gets a little. This thing gets a little weird there.
I
Um,
would charge something. Something, yeah. Yeah, chicken
I,
coop, I'm charging.
is it like a flat fee, or I think I think if you invest in an area where people do that, you have to have a plan. All of mine are kind of in like like the city, so we're not really allowed to. So if I was investing maybe in like Yakima or something a little bit more like the rural, then maybe. But
It depends if it's a emotional support chicken, then you can't charge
Yeah.
anything.
oh,
And Frank, old guy REI, just since he had mentioned something, I'll just throw it out there too. So this is Frank's the T-shirt that they are selling for the ORAT event. I'll put the PayPal link. He is donating the funds to the Blind Center in Vegas, so go check it out. I'll put the link soon. But he is in California. He invests in out of state, but he invests in 4 states. So that is pretty tough. So we're always giving him shit on how he deals with that and manages with that, but it works for him. So I'm not sure if Pittsburgh is on the radar for him, but if he is looking for a new market, I think Pittsburgh would be a great place to look. So Curtis, do you have any more questions, or do you kind of want to look into that deal that Liam might be
yeah. So I guess this will kind of segue into the deal. So Jim had brought up the age of the houses, right? So when you're running the numbers or you're managing these spots that were made in 1780 or whatever, how
That's
much do
Frank's
you
birthday, Frank and Jim's birthday.
how much do you set aside, because there's going to be issues with just how old it is.
Yeah, again, it's case by case basis. So we do have older properties here in Pittsburgh, like a lot of early 1900s properties. When we're walking a place, like we're looking out for things that might come up on that age of home. So a lot of times it's foundation stuff. We have older foundations, older framing and stuff like that in these older houses. So we're looking out for that, like general signs of like maybe movement in the foundation or any deterioration. If there is something, a lot of times we can kind of tell. Like I mean, structural engineers probably make a killing out here in Pittsburgh. Like I've walked a ton of properties with them. Like I have an eye for, that looks wrong type of thing. But if there's any ambiguity, get a structural engineer out there, have them look at things. Another thing is wiring. Based on age of homes, you might run into some knob and tube wiring at some point. So if you have to fully rewire a house, maybe like a single family house, like 3 stories, maybe it's like 15 grand to rewire it or something like that. So keeping out, like, what does the wiring look like? A lot of these properties, though, have been updated at some point in the last couple decades. So you'll find like these houses were built in, early 1900s, but the wiring is like newer Romex wiring. So maybe a couple decades ago, they updated that, which is pretty typical. Like we'll see that unless the property's just not been touched and needs renovated from top to bottom, you'll have some knob and tube to deal with. And even sometimes you'll still have some knob and tube to deal with depending on the property. But those are big things is foundations, wiring, and then otherwise you can kind of tell when you're walking a place, or we can, like, what type of condition is this place in? Is it kind of going to require some more maintenance and repairs over the first 3 years of ownership? You're going to have to kind of do some stuff to get it up to speed, or like up to a good condition where you're not spending as much on an annual basis, just kind of doing random updates. But yeah, budgeting, I mean, I think we usually say like 80 to 120 bucks a month per unit in just like maintenance, CapEx, repair, vacancy budget. So that's like a good rule of thumb we like to say, rather than like a percentage basis. But really, it's again case by case basis. When you're walking a place, are there any indications of things not being updated or things being original to the home based on like the year it was built? So foundations are a big thing, wiring's a big thing, but we can generally see that and then account for that when we're kind of like budgeting for our rehab or stabilization period, or just on the purchase price. You kind of factor that in to kind of what you're going to offer, knowing that some things are going to come up. Yeah.
So if anyone wants to reach out to Liam and his team or Jeremy's team, I put the Instagram page for Team Taggart. So go follow them and you can message them there if you want to contact Liam. The PayPal link for the shirts in there, and also Curtis's YouTube channel, P turned RE. Rad is tuning in. Rad's a newer member in school. He is in Florida and he bought a property in Pittsburgh. So morning, Rad. Harrison, who also works for Jeremy and his team, has a question. He says, are there any Pittsburgh-based insurance companies that cover knob and tube home?
It's a good question. I mean, every time I've had insurance or I have a client that needs insurance, I send them to our one broker who we use, who is really good. He's able to, like, since he's a broker, he can field quotes from several different companies. And he usually has the best rates. And since he's local, he knows that like what coverages pretty much are needed in the city of Pittsburgh or this area. So he can kind of like be that filter. If like you're out of state, like he'll kind of have that knowledge of like what's probably needed in terms of replacement costs, coverage, certain things that might come up. So usually I just refer people to him. His name's Casey. And he's really, really good. But yeah, that's who I use for all mine as well.
Yeah, so Burkhead Insurance. Yeah, he just got me some quotes on a property I'm under contract for. But yeah, good guy, very responsive. Flavio is not speaking English again. I'm not sure what he's saying. He says, "What you said, Curtis? What rural?" I don't know. With a red, yeah, I'm not sure what he's getting at. But so Flavio, so yesterday we had a live and some random people, you know, bots or whatever, making weird comments, and I gave Flavio moderator ability to try and block these people. That was somehow Flavio is text messaging his tenants. Can I block you? Or try to block his tenants are like, what are you talking about? And, yeah. But anyways, but Flavio's a funny guy, man.
So was he doing that on his flip phone, or what was he doing?
That's what I said. I'm surprised it was working, but Flavio. But yeah, he was trying to text message me, and I guess he was messaging his tenants about blocking them or whatever. They're like, what are you talking about? Steven's also here. Steven's also working with Jeremy folks. He says good morning. He's in Canada. He's looking to invest in Pittsburgh. But Charles asks, can owners do their own work? I'm assuming this is what he's asking. So can the owner do their own work?
Yeah, a lot of them do. Especially if it's like more mom and pop kind of landlord based in Pittsburgh. Yeah, there's definitely people who will kind of do their own work on the places. I try not to do that. Number one, because I feel like I'll probably have to redo it at some point. If I do it, it's probably not going to be great. But also just time purposes and trying to treat it like a business. I try to outsource as much as I can. And it should work for the numbers anyways. Like if you're buying a place where like the only way it really works is if you have to self-manage or have to kind of DIY some of the repairs, it's probably not a great deal anyways. So, you know, I kind of default towards if you're treating it like a business, you should be able to outsource some of those things, get, you know, experienced handyman or contractor to do certain things. But there definitely are certain mom and pop owners around here who will DIY stuff.
Liam, I'm not sure. Do you know Sarah Bloom also? She was
with
okay.
Sarah's awesome. Yeah.
So Sarah was just on Coach Carson's podcast.
That was a great podcast. Yeah.
So she did mention Pittsburgh in there, but she is now in Detroit. She's a investor, property manager out in Detroit. But yeah, so she was talking about Pittsburgh. That was her first house hack, I believe. Then she became an agent under Jeremy's team also. So I'm trying to get her on the channel also, but she loves Ambridge. I was talking to her about Ambridge and
I think that's where her first and second house hack were in Ambridge. Yep.
And yeah, so before we get Curtis, maybe asking a little more question or digging into that deal, he has what Harrison does have a question for you though, Curtis. He says, "How do you feel about investing out of state? Are you nervous?"
Yeah, it's just something that's like different. Like I'm finally getting a little bit comfortable with the way that I'm doing things here, right? Because I'm self like managing. I know what to look for. I'm pretty comfortable, right? I have my contacts here, and then kind of going like way to the other side, or where I don't have that access to, right? Like I feel like I have to almost start over. And in a sense, there, I know you're making the face, Mark, but but
Because I know the real reason why you're moving that way. Because I saw your chart. Remember that what you posted. So Liam Curtis posted on, I think it was Instagram maybe, but there was this chart about what was it, single women? No, or where
yeah.
it was like where there's the most single women, and they're all like in like the northeast area or the south,
Perfect.
like that side. So in Curtis as well, there's a lot of dudes in that area, so that's why he's trying to look out.
But I probably have to like fly in and like really understand like the area. I think that'd probably make me more comfortable. Like I don't know if Mark, if you did that or if you seem kind of like a wild gun, you probably just bought something and the building did or did not exist. But
We have a lot of people who do both those things. Some people just are, strictly through email. Like I'll never even talk to them on the phone and they'll purchase a place. Other people, it's like they'll want to get boots on the ground before they kind of buy anything. They'll come into town. We'll show them a few places like in different areas, get a
Mhm.
feel for the city. And then they kind of get more active in terms of placing offers and stuff like that. So we kind of have a combination of both. And you're not alone, Curtis. Like there's a lot of people who like are more apprehensive about out of state investing, but there's tons of people who do it, who
Oh
get
yeah,
comfortable with it and like
yeah.
it's shit, like so it's fully possible. But again, like starting over with like new contacts and a new understanding of a new market and stuff like that, you just really have to lean on your team
Mhm.
who's out of state and like on the ground with you. Like they'll like we pass along all of our contacts in terms of property managers, contractors, attorneys, lenders, insurance guys, kind of all that stuff. So, even leasing people who like maybe not attached to a property management company, but they'll lease it for you a little bit quicker. Kind of all those things. Like if you're going to a new market and doing out of state investing, that should be the standard. Is like you should connect with like, a rock star in one of those kind of sectors in the industry, and then they should be able to pass you some really good contacts from there.
Yeah, and then I guess kind of the other thing is like, well, if I go over there, would be my competitive edge, right? Because like here, I have some right, like I can house hack, right? So like I can get into the property for less, right? Or here, I already know the areas, I already know like the people, so the speed of things can go a little bit like faster. And then also here, I also have my agents like a license too. I just got licensed, so then I can do my own deal, right? And so here, I just have some competitive edges, which I'm
Mhm.
not sure what my edge would be over there.
You're leveraging the competitive edge that your contacts has. So in our case, it's like us, like me and Jeremy, like you get to leverage the competitive edge and the knowledge of the market and the investment strategies that we have. So we pass that on to our clients, every single one. So that's kind of your edge. Yeah, you're right though. You're not on the ground and able to kind of, move and shake and kind of get things done and make things happen and leverage things on your own, but you're
Mhm.
leaning on someone who has a competitive edge in that particular market and
Okay.
it can pass that on to you as a client.
Jim says the research I've done, the outskirts, not Pittsburgh City. You can do what you want to do on your own property. City is requiring electrical, plumbing, and mechanical to be a trade from what I read. Hey, Kenny's here. Good morning. Jen is probably in the Lady of ORAT's call right now, but Kenny, I have a feeling they're possibly looking at maybe another market to invest. I think they're in California, but I think even Texas is getting difficult for them to find deals. So they are, I think, thinking about the idea of what other markets are out there. Steven, who, like I said, does work with Jeremy and Liam folks, he says, does it cost or does it cost and take longer for contractors and electricians, plumbers, HVAC, etc., outside of Allegheny County, like Butler, Ambridge, Aliquippa, to get work done?
I would say outside of the city, it probably I think it's more based on timing. So in the city, it might take a little bit longer because you maybe got to go through, the building inspectors and permitting process in the city, which is maybe just a little bit more involved. So it won't cost more other than like the timing will make it cost more. So it might take a little bit more time to get those electrical permits or whatever it may be and get those inspected. And obviously time is money. So I think that's kind of the factor there.
So are we got anything, Kurt? Do you want Liam to bring up that deal and maybe take a peek at it?
Yeah, I think if we bring up that deal, that'd be great, and that sparks some more questions there.
Okay, cool.
Tired of seeing your face, Mark.
Let's see here.
I can block you right now if I can take you off this. Is that who is that on Instagram when I was messaging them about being a Bears fan? They liked, I think they commented. Oh no, it wasn't you. It wasn't you. It was Tony Daniels. He's in Ohio. He's a firefighter. But I was saying something about the Bears, and I think it might be like the uncle or brother. They're just like laughing at me.
Looks like it wants me to restart Chrome in order to.
Okay, well, I mean, whatever we can do. I mean,
see
if
here.
not, while you're doing that, maybe I could see. Okay, Curtis. While he's doing that, maybe is there? I know we're talking about Pittsburgh now, and maybe out of. Is there other markets you're possibly pondering on, like thinking about, or?
Yeah, so I think it kind of depends on what the play is. So, like for example, my dad, he's in Florida, but he mostly does like flips and stuff. But I've talked to him and said, hey, it'd be nice if you kept a few. And he's like, well, I don't really want to keep them because he's based out of like the Orlando area. He said, well, if I was gonna keep any, I'd keep them in like Jacksonville. So I'm like,
Oh,
oh, okay. And then so I went and I looked in Jacksonville, like the market, based on the numbers that I ran, it actually does like cash flow there. The only thing I have to get more familiar with that area would be like the insurance cost because I know it can really vary.
and then how many single women are there? Like that.
Hey, I've been down. Hey, I've been down to Florida. Let's just say the weather and ladies are both very nice. But so there, I also saw like North Carolina, South
Yeah.
Carolina. I think Coach Carson, he does a lot of
South
stuff
Carolina,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Stay away from the Carolina. That's where I'm going to move after, so you can come hang out with me over there. But so I don't know if Val is still here, but Val's daughter is in Jacksonville. I think they are looking for so Val's in North Carolina, but I think the daughter's in Jacksonville, so they are trying to look for something over there for her. But I think Jeffrey, who's also just joined school, he's always on Frank's Wednesday. Oh, so today's Wednesday, so Frank's call. Jeffrey's in Jacksonville also, I believe, and I think there's some newer members in school that might be looking at Jacksonville. But Jim,
okay, I'll jump off real quick, go to F.I.R.E, and then I'll be right back in a second.
Cool.
I can present. I'll be right back.
So we'll maybe wait on Jim's question. And if you haven't, her YouTube handle right now is Flabulous Mama, but that is Carrie, that is Charles' wife, or however you want to go about her. Charles is her husband or what, but she's killing it on TikTok. So go check her out on TikTok. Hey, hold on. Let me get him back in here first. Let's see. Let me get him back in the middle. There we go. I see Brandon here. Build to Rent Texas is here. Cool, man. So he has a cool YouTube channel. He does build to rent. That's his model in the Texas area. He says not find deals, building deals, writing up an offer while I type on a lot of purchase and start building soon. We should get it. Yep. So he's doing a lot of cool stuff. He's kind of secretive. He said I gotta wait talking about some of the stuff he's working on, but he's doing some cool stuff down there. But hold on, let's see what awesome. We got here.
You guys see the screen?
Yes, we do. But we see. So right now, what I see is your restream in front of. There we go.
Okay, cool. So this is that one, that fourplex I mentioned. I figured this would be a good one. So this is.
Can you go full screen here?
Yep.
Perfect.
Is that any better?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you might need to like zoom in though.
Well, get off your phone. I can see it. You're probably on a.
All right, so this is a
There we go. There we go.
four unit, not far from where I'm at right now. So yeah, they listed this as, oh yeah, it was all 2-bedroom units, but after walking it functionally, it's kind of more 1-bedroom units, the way it's set up. So obviously, like that's something we notice when we're walking a place. Like functionally, is really 1 or 2. But these are the current rents. So these are all, only 1 unit is vacant currently. This tenant's been there for a while, and then 950 on the other couple. So I met these tenants when walking it. They were all, it's always a good indication when you can get on site, meet the tenants. Are they friendly? Are their units well kept? So that's a good indication, especially when you're investing for cash flow. This one I had a client offer on, but then the agent couldn't get a hold of the seller after that. So he had to withdraw it for like 2 weeks. I think the seller just ghosted him for some reason. So it didn't end up going under contract, but we really like this deal. So you can kind of see like exteriors in good shape, basic rental. Like this is the vacant unit, needs a little bit of updating. I think we had it pegged at like probably 15,000 to do paint, flooring, kitchen, bathroom, light fixtures, somewhere in that range. But then market rents are probably 1,000 to 1,100 on something like this. Purpose built 4 unit, so it's got a central hallway, a central staircase with a basement. But decent area, like it's more C class area. But I'll show you on a map here how close it is to some areas that are really nice. So this here in the East End, this like between the 2 rivers here, generally we see the highest appreciation in this kind of area. This is kind of where it's most densely populated. All the hospitals and universities are. Some of the really nice areas like Shadyside, Lawrenceville, Strip District are very high-end neighborhoods. Highland Park, East Liberty here, that's where like Target and Home Depot and everything is. So this one is kind of like in the North Oakland, more like Shenley Heights area, but Oakland is right here where like University of Pittsburgh is like right in this area. So it's like a 20-minute walk from this particular property. So what that tells me is like this particular section is not fully like gentrified or transitioned yet, but just based on proximity to some of these other really nice neighborhoods and the schools that are here, this should have a lot of upside in the future, along with having great current cash flow numbers. So that's something I liked about this one. And then pictures aren't too bad. The one thing after walking this was, going back to like maintenance and repairs and stuff like that, the basement was a little sketch. Like I couldn't identify anything in particular that was like, okay, the basement needs this, but I could just tell when walking it. It's like, all right, the basement might need some stuff at some point, like maybe some joists shored up a little bit or maybe some rewiring done. So I'd be budgeting a little bit more on reserves and updates on this one, or like assume that this is going to have a little bit of a stabilization period to get it to highest and best use. But the numbers are hard to ignore here. 4 units that are renting for about, when it's stabilized, about $1,000. That's really good income on a property that's 250,000. So that's a good
So
cash flow deal in the city.
when we look at this deal, you were saying because of the age, because of the basement, you'll want to set aside more. So for someone that's like newer, so what can they anticipate to put to the side, be it for property management, be it for like the reserves? You don't have to give an exact dollar amount, but just like percentage wise.
So property management is typically 8 to 10% of gross rents. So that's one thing. Reserves. So on this one, it's like we'll walk it, we'll look into everything. This client offered under asking based on, the vacant unit needing renovated a little bit. The bedrooms being more 1-bedroom functionally than 2 bedrooms. And also, like the basement needing worked on. So he offered a little bit under asking, but from the amount of like really nailing down the numbers on like how much should he expect to put into it over the next 1 or 2 years, we were going to lean mainly on the inspection. So we were going to get, obviously an inspection done, get more information about the building
Mm-hmm.
and the condition, and then maybe get a specialist, like a basement specialist, to kind of look at things and be like, okay, these couple joists need shored up. The wiring in this section probably needs replaced. So we were going to lean on that 10 to 14-day inspection period, get the inspector in there, and then I use a guy, his name's Zach, with Advanced Basement Solutions, and he's really good at like waterproofing, structural stuff. And I would have him come look and just assess the property, assess the basement, and see what's going on, and see what he would recommend as a professional to get it into like good condition. So from there, we'd have a dollar figure of like, okay, over the next 2 years or 1 year, the basement alone might need $10,000 worth of work, just shoring up joists, making sure things are good and dry. And then we could either factor that into our reply to inspections and maybe get a price reduction, or the seller to cover some of that, or at least the buyer knows he should expect to pay probably 10,000 over the next year or two, stabilizing this property, getting it up to a good condition where he's not going to have to spend as much on maintenance and repairs. So when we're walking a place, we make the best possible assumptions we can based on the condition of the property. And then from there, when it comes and that's enough information for us to, hopefully lock it up and get it under contract, because we're convinced it's already a good deal. And then really nailing down the certain numbers on reserves and amount of dollars it's going to take to get it stabilized. We'll lean on the inspection period and the professionals to really get that done on something like this. A lot of the times, there's less ambiguity around the condition and the basement or whatever it may be. And we can make a solid assumption of like, the vacant unit needs 15K. You need to update this panel for 2,500. You need to add a jack post in the basement for 1,500. But with more ambiguity that this one had, we'd lean more on like, okay, let's get an actual quote from a basement specialist type of thing.
Okay, so that was very thorough and detailed for this property, but let's zoom out a little bit. So, like, let's say, okay, I am interested in this market, and let me kind of run some deals so I can kind of learn it. What are some assumptions that I can make? Okay, let's assume high on the property management. Let's say it's 10. Let's say it's 10%, and then are you setting aside 15% of the gross rents, 20% of the gross rents? Just kind of just for the newer folks.
Yep. For something like this, if you want to use a percentage basis for reserves, I'd say maybe like 7% for maintenance, repairs, and capex, 7% each. Rule of thumb is like 5% each for maintenance, repairs, capex, and vacancy. So that'd put you at 15%. Something like this, I'd probably say more like 25% of gross rents for all those things. But we don't, I don't love using percentage. It's a little bit vague in my opinion. So depending on the property, I'll say like, anywhere from 80 to $120 a month per unit should be set aside for those items. So this one being a little bit older, needing a little bit more work, I'd say you should be on the higher end of that scale. So maybe $120 per month per unit, at least until you have it stabilized into a good period. That first 1 to 3 years, you know more about the things that are coming up or occurring in terms of maintenance and repairs, and then you have more information to go off. But something like this, I'd probably say on the higher end of the reserve budget, based on the gross rents. Yeah.
Did you say you walked this one already, Liam?
Yep. Yep.
So I'm not sure if you're able to, or if the listing mentions anything about utilities, but Jim's saying, are the utilities separated, plumbing, electrical, or is that a management
So all
issue?
utilities on this one were separated. And by all utilities, I typically mean gas and electric, because it depends on the municipality if water is allowed to be separated or not. So I think this one had one water meter, which is pretty typical for multi-units. So most of the time as the owner, you're going to be paying the water, but there are some municipalities that allow multiple water meters per unit. So, if this had 4 water meters, you could just bill back the tenant for their exact usage on water. But yes, this one, what I typically want to see on the multi-units is separate gas and separate electric. I don't really want to deal with properties that, you have to eat the entire heating cost for the whole building. It usually eats into the numbers a little bit too much. So gas and electric separated here. Water, I don't think it was, but if you wanted to pass the cost of the water onto the tenant, if there's not separate water meters, what we can typically say is that you implement like a flat utility fee. So, rent's $1,000 a month, but they pay another 50 in a water fee. Because you can't bill them back like a certain dollar amount. It just has to be a flat fee because there's only one water meter. So you can't really estimate like, oh, this is a 2-bedroom unit, this is a 1-bedroom unit, and kind of prorate it. You just have to do like a flat water fee. So that's a way you can still pass on the cost of water onto the tenants if you don't have separate meters.
Was there parking here? What was the parking situation?
There's a parking over here to the right. Yeah. Generally, you have street parking, though, in a lot of these city areas. Let's see this picture. There was like kind of a parking pad here when I went, sort of. Or maybe it was like down here somewhere. But I remember backing into that spot. But street parking is not atypical in a lot of these city neighborhoods that are a little bit more densely populated. So street parking alone is not like a huge deterrent for me, depending on the deal, unless you're on like a really steep hill or something like that. Or you're doing a flip. Flips are important to have off-street parking.
Jim also mentioned, is a deal like that financeable right now as it stands rather than the cash transaction?
Good question. Yeah. So this one was in good enough condition to get conventional financing. Yes. Some properties, if they're like not livable or not in like adequate shape, it'll be harder to get financing. This would definitely qualify for conventional financing. FHA would be a nightmare here, though. Like if you're looking to house hack, this likely wouldn't pass FHA standards for condition. But yeah, conventional financing would be no issue here.
So Brandon, build to rent. He also they have a property management company in Texas. He says you take the utility fee and divide by the number of people in each unit. And he says apportioning it by number of people who rent per unit most fairly allocates the water. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see what else. Okay. If you're able to bring it up or anything, is there or maybe just in general, Jim is asking, go over property taxes because they change per county. Do you want to? I don't know how deep. I don't know how deep you want to get because it is that is the one thing. Yeah.
I could do a quick rundown on how I do property taxes because that's a good question. So property taxes, like on the MLS, we can see current property taxes like. Right here, they're super low. It looks like it hasn't been reassessed in a long time. So they're at $958 per month. That's not realistic. Like it'll get reassessed at some point after purchase. Typically in the city, they're a bit slower to reassess, but at some point it'll get reassessed. Taxes will go up. So if I'm looking at that, first thing I would do, Allegheny County real estate portal. I plug in the address. And from here, I go down to this section here where it is basically listing the building and land value, and this is the current assessment value. So I use this website called Anytime Taxes for Allegheny County. And what I'll do to see current and new taxes, if it were reassessed, is all in this drop-down menu. You go to the certain municipality. So it's City of Pittsburgh, and you know that because it says right here in municipality is Pittsburgh. If for another property, it'd say Dormont or Brentwood or Millvale or whatever it may be. But City of Pittsburgh. And then from there, you enter the land value and building value into this area right here. So 16,400 and what was it? 25,200. So that gives you current, and this lines up with what was listed on the MLS. This is current taxes. Now, if you wanted to determine if it were reassessed, what would taxes go to? You enter the new assessment value into this box right here. And we determine that by it's the common level ratio times the market value. So if this was reassessed, they would argue that the purchase price, whatever price you purchase this for, is the new market value for obvious reasons. So let's say it's 245 is the new market value. And then the common level ratio now, it's been dropped in recent years. So it was like 80 something percent. It's gone down to 52 point something percent now. So what you're just going to do is do that market value. Say you buy it for 245 times 0.53. This would be the new assessment value that they're running the tax figures on. So then you just put that in here. And this would be the highest dollar amount it would go to on your annual taxes. And that's not too bad, actually. Like there's some areas that'll go up to 4, 5, 6 grand a year in taxes, and that can really eat into cash flow. 2,500 per year is not too bad, especially on something that's cash flowing well. But this would be the number that you could potentially underwrite it at, or be aware that like at some point in the next few years, if you get reassessed, this is likely the dollar amount it'll be on an annual tax basis. So this website I use is really helpful for that, because there are some properties that like, oh, it's cash flowing great, but then if you're reassessed, taxes might go up several $1,000s, and it can kind of eat into those annual cash flow numbers.
And I could be wrong, but I believe it still comes down to the boroughs and whatnot. But
Yeah,
it's not a place like, for example, like Hawaii or Texas, where you get reassessed every year. So you may
No.
get reassessed, and then it may be a few years or a while where something actually gets reassessed again. Correct?
Yeah, usually it's upon the sale is when we see it, or like every 10 years or something, they do a countywide reassessment where they just go and reassess everybody's properties. But generally, it's upon a sale. If they see that something has recently sold, it'll kind of bump it to the top of their list in terms of, oh, we need to reassess this place because it sold for a couple $100,000 over what it sold for the last time 10 or 20 years ago, or whatever it may be.
And I'm not sure if you've gone through the process. I haven't. But Michael Honda, who's from Hawaii, who also invests in Pittsburgh, he is. I think he's going to challenge one of his property tax reassessments. So
Yep.
we'll follow that too and see how that goes, how that process goes.
Yeah, and there's people you can hire who will actually challenge it for you. But also, yeah, I think you just get on a call or like a FaceTime with these people. And Jeremy did it recently, and the goal would be to get the assumed market value down as low as possible. So maybe you buy for 245, but you're like, oh, the market's gone down, or I had to put repairs into it or something. Like market value is really 230. So then when they run that common level ratio against that to get the assessment value, it's a lower. That would be kind of the goal of that call, or when you're arguing it.
Yeah,
Or
and a
if,
lot. Yeah,
or if
and
they had if taxes are based on that 80 something percent common level ratio that used to be the case a couple of years ago, you could go and argue those and say, well, common level ratio is 53% now, so that alone will bring it down, which is what we're seeing now that the common level ratio has been lowered.
Yeah, and a lot of times, so you get all these letters like, oh, well, this attorney, that. So a lot of them, that's what they focus on, like that's their business, and so a lot of times you don't even have to pay anything up front. It's more they'll take you on, and it's almost like a percentage or a cut of whatever savings you get is what you're gonna pay for the fee or the attorney's fee or whatnot. And I always joke about it though for like figuring out property taxes, and this site I use also this link, but my joke is my property tax calculator is Mikey Honda. So I send it, hey Mikey, what's this? So Mikey he loves crunching in the numbers. He's the technician, so Mikey is very good at figuring out these data points.
Yep.
Let's see. Hey, Josh Burdick, what's up, man? He's waiting in the Seattle airport right now. Yeah, I know he's traveling right now. Yeah, Curtis, any more questions? I mean,
All
I have
right.
another deal I can show you too after this.
Yeah. So pull that up. So Mark. So,
yeah.
besides the age of the buildings that are somehow older than you, what else? What's another downside to the Pittsburgh area?
I mean, it all revolves kind of around the age of the home. I think getting the like Jeremy talked about, I mean Liam talked about, like some areas are very hill, or there's a lot of hills in it, so you just have to be aware of that. Also, like the basement, for in Hawaii, we don't have basements, so a lot of times you get these inspection reports, and it talks about maybe some dampness and whatnot. So it is pretty common for. I don't think I've ever got an inspection report back that hasn't really mentioned something like damp or you
Yeah.
know.
Hmm.
It's pretty
So
normal to have some dampness and things.
yeah,
It's hard to get Pittsburgh basements bone dry, but it's
yeah.
just about making sure it's not really deteriorating the property or becoming a real issue. Like a couple drops here and there when it rains heavily is it's pretty normal, and any structural engineer or basement guy will tell you like, it's really fine. It's not going to do much damage to the property. You just want to make sure that you're kind of alleviating any issues going forward, or if you're getting a ton of water in the basement, that's obviously going to be an issue for mold growth or the foundation or whatever. But a few drops here and there is pretty typical in these old basements.
Yeah. So, I mean, those would be the biggest thing. That's it's kind of that age, like I said, getting comfortable with the inspection report because like I said, it's pretty, especially if you don't have basements in your area and you're going to invest in this market. And now you see this inspection report, which talks about a lot of people that are like, oh, like, should I be worried about this? And then you talk to other investors or people that are in Pittsburgh and, it's pretty common. We can do a little more research into it, but it's pretty standard for it to kind of pop up on the inspection report. But other than that, I mean, like Liam touched on, to a lot of people when they look at Pittsburgh, they're always talking about the population is maybe not as growing as much as other areas. And Liam touched on that, how the past few years it's kind of changed for Pittsburgh. But I think the one thing too, it's for me, I always touch on it. I still think Pittsburgh hasn't broke out yet because of its affordability. So because it's one of the last few major markets that it's still in that area where it's almost cheaper to buy than rent, that it hasn't quite flipped and taken off where people can't afford to buy a home, right? So where a lot of other areas, that's when the rental market starts to explode because people just can't afford to buy a home, right? So I think right now that's kind of why it hasn't got to that level yet. It kind of just flies under the radar, right? It kind of just does its own thing. It's kind of boring, but it's still affordable to where people still can buy homes. So it's not completely flipped to where it's all just investors and a rental market. So if that ever does change, I think that's where it's going to take off. And then if people also notice, I know Trump just signed an executive order for the steel facilities.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be something big for the economy in that area, also the jobs that are talking about that. But yeah, if there's another deal, or if that answered your question, Curtis, or if you want
Yeah.
to, but yeah, if
Yeah,
there's
we're
another
also
deal.
doing that steel thing should be huge for the area, and then we're adding another. We're updating the airport, which is pretty cool too. I just watched a YouTube 40-minute YouTube video on the Pittsburgh airport being updated, but that should modernize that a little bit too, which will be a cool project.
And the hit TV show The Pit is in Pittsburgh.
That's right. Yep. My wife's in the medical field. She made me watch it with her.
Yeah, it's big. It's big, man. That's like the new what ER. ER was like that,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Yeah, so the Pit is a new one, new version of it.
Yeah, but there's this other deal I was going to show you too. So this is kind of a different play. Like this one's pure cash flow. The other one was too, but it's higher dollar amount. This one, a client just bought this for 135. It's a duplex with, and this was a great deal, 3-bedroom units. One of them had 1.5 bathrooms. The other had one, fully updated. So you'll kind of see like the condition of these units are in really good shape. Good size bedrooms, good size common area, like fully updated from top to bottom. These units would probably rent for $1,300 each. This is the upstairs unit. Nothing wonky about the layouts. All the bedrooms are real good sizes. Mechanicals were updated. But this one was a great cash flow play. Given the price and the rent to price ratio on the back end, like it should gross like $2,600 a month on $125,000 or $35,000 purchase price. But this one's just in a more, let's see here, map. So this one's more in like it's in Port View, which is just a little bit more kind of down southeast of the city here. So downtown's right here. It's probably 30 minutes from downtown. Again, kind of how I was saying, like you go 30 or 40 minutes in any direction of the city, and you start to see some better pricing and rent to price ratios. So I would say more C plus area, but this particular neighborhood, this Portview area, is not bad at all. Like, you know, it's you drive through there and it's perfectly fine. Um, but just a cheaper area in general. So good rent to price ratios. That Ambridge area is up in this way here. So it's in the other direction, but that's another neighborhood we like. And there's a lot of these, like Aliquippa can be good for cash flow, a little bit more gritty there. Um, you know, out this way, you got Coriopolis, airports out here somewhere. And then Robinson is like a good job hub. So this is a really happening kind of area. So a lot of people who are living in these cheaper areas might commute to Robinson for work. So it's a good job hub there if you're kind of outside the city center. But yeah, this was a good cash flow deal. One of our clients just closed on just like, 2 weeks ago or something. So he's in the process of having his management company get that rented currently. But that'll be a good cash flow deal for him.
I didn't do a full-on deal analysis or anything like that, but based on what you just told me, the person probably like net probably around like $800-900 just from this one.
Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah, I think he argued the management fee down from 10 to 8%. But also you can see like he won't have to budget as much for maintenance and repairs on this one because it's fully updated. There was some stuff in the basement that we got a credit for to take care of, just like kind of some odds and ends. But cosmetically, it's updated really nicely. And since he's getting those basement things taken care of, he can safely assume that, the ongoing maintenance and repairs, he could budget a little bit less for that on a monthly basis because all these updates have already been done. So maybe it's closer to that, $80 a month figure instead of that 120 or whatever it may be.
And one trend that I'm noticing is a lot of these are kind of stacked on top of each other. Is that kind of like all the I know it's not all, but is that like the majority of the multifamily there?
Good question. So we prefer side by sides. Like having a side by side duplex is, obviously better than having an up down because if there's any issues in the top one, it won't translate to the bottom. Like one time I had one of my fourplexes, it was two side by side duplexes that were up down, and one tenant, he was an older guy that a tenant I inherited left the sink running and then like fell asleep or something, and the ceiling in the bedroom below like fully collapsed because there was just water running. So you won't have those issues on a side by side, but side by sides, they trade at a bit of a premium because of that. And they're great deals though, but I wouldn't pass on an up down in the hopes of like finding a great side by side. I don't think being an up down is inherently like a good deterrent or a reason to pass on a good deal,
Let's see. Liam said, Flavio's asking Liam, what was the last natural disaster in Pittsburgh? So Liam is not originally from Pittsburgh, so I don't know how far, but what is maybe in your recent memory?
I mean, we had every now and then we'll get like pretty heavy winds and storms. Like a couple weeks ago, we had a pretty big storm that like knocked down a whole bunch of trees. Power was out for some people for several days.
Jeremy lost the roof, right? On one of his properties.
Jeremy lost the roof. It freaking blew off. Yeah. So there was a lot of that, but I mean, insurance will cover most of that, so, but I know there was a huge flood in like 2000. It was either the 90s or like 2004 or something where a good portion of some neighborhoods got flooded out, but that's like, it was the neighborhoods in the flood zone, like the FEMA flood zone. And it's kind of like, if you're in the flood zone and you're either in the 100-year floodplain or the 500-year floodplain, it was those like 100-year type of flooding events. But that's something we look out for when we're looking at properties is like, is it in a floodplain? And we typically stay away from those for that reason, mostly insurance purposes, is because you're going to pay quite a premium on insurance if you're in a floodplain. It just makes the cash flow numbers a little bit harder. But we don't have a ton of crazy weather or natural disasters here. Luckily, like we're just not in that region of the country. But yeah, like a few bad storms here and there.
So there's not a lot of natural disaster. I know it's not the warmest place. So during the winter time, Is there like frozen pipes? Is that
Oh
like,
yeah. Yeah, it
oh,
depends. Yeah, we get frozen pipes. We got to look out for that in certain times of the year.
mhm,
If temperatures get below like the teens, you'll start to have issues, but it depends how the plumbing's laid out in the house. Like there's certain on some properties there's certain portions of the piping that's maybe not insulated or it's up against a wall, so it's right near that cold air. Um, so in those circumstances, you have to look out for it, be aware of it. I kind of just, I mean, I've never had any issues, but again, it depends on the property, and you kind of know that going into the place. But
mhm,
you'll let tenants know, hey, keep a faucet dripping. It's going to be like 5 degrees this weekend. But we don't have many of those days or weeks over the year. Maybe like 1 or 2 weeks throughout the year, we'll have like really cold weather. But generally, I mean, I'm originally from like the Buffalo area where it's like a frozen tundra for 8 months out of the year, it feels like. So it's more of an issue there. But our cold uh, weeks or days, like we don't get a ton of them. It's just during those times, just make tenants aware, like leave the faucet running, um, make sure the heat's pumping, stuff like that. And also it depends on the type of piping you have. So this one had all PEX piping. So it had that
mhm.
red and blue PEX piping, which we might be able to see. We might be able to see in here. You can kind of see it right here. This red and blue PEX piping. So if the property has that, like if that plumbing's been updated to this at some point, this expands and contracts much better in cold temperatures. So this is much less likely to freeze and burst than like old copper pipes. So that's another thing is like when you're looking at property, depending on the price, cash flow numbers, all that stuff, like copper pipes are not a reason not to buy a place, but it's something you're aware of and kind of factoring in. Uh, am I going to have to think about this when the temperature drops below 15 degrees or whatever it may be? But in this case, with PEX plumbing, and a lot of properties have been updated to this, or if you're renovating something, this is what you put in. You don't have to worry about burst pipes as much.
I, I got you. And so when seeing these deals, right? What if multiple folks from our ORAT group come to you or Jeremy and say, "Hey, this this house we want it, but it's multiple people." How do you kind of like manage that?
It's a good question. We get that a lot actually, but it doesn't happen really all that often. And if it does, usually it's like because there's 3 people on our team. It's me, Jeremy, and Logan. I mean, I can't even really think of any circumstances where like one of us has had multiple people on like one particular property. If anything, it's maybe like Logan is like handling something, and I hear after the fact that like one of his clients got it. I'm like, oh, god damn it. Um, but it doesn't really come up that often, to be honest. Um, we just have a lot of different clients who, they have their own particular buy boxes. So it doesn't typically happen. And there's lots of properties to go around, to be honest. And also just timing. If somebody reaches out and they're ready to go, or, we send them all the videos and the rundown and the rent numbers and
Mhm.
the market rent projections and our estimated rehab costs. And then it's a timing thing too. So if they're ready to go, they're ready to go type of thing.
I got you.
Yeah. So I think, a lot of that too, like Liam touched on, we're not all buying at the same time. We probably all looked at them, and at the same time, we're all slightly looking at maybe different markets. I mean, or zip codes slightly,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe slightly different price points. But we are kind of all communicating with each other, like, hey, I'm kind of looking at this one just so other we're not battling each other price point wise, and like we don't know it, like like maybe I'm looking at something and I didn't know Mikey's looking at something, we're going back, and
Mhm.
I'm jacking up the price on him because I'm going, so we do try to
Yeah.
communicate so we know, like, hey, we're all, someone is looking at this, or do you have interest in this? But it hasn't come up to where multiple people are really looking at the same one at one time.
Oh,
So, like Jack is kind of in his own little zip code, and I think Harrison's kind of leaning towards that. Me and Mikey are kind of in our little zip code. Steven's trying to figure out his. Jim kind of has his own. He wants more something where he's probably going to like I said, take it down to the studs, right? So he's looking at something else. So yeah, but we are all communicating and just kind of letting each other know kind of what we're looking at or what might be on the table for us and whatnot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, everybody has their own specific buy box or investment strategy they want to implement. And Pittsburgh just so happens to have like a lot of different areas where you can kind of put different things into play. And so,
yeah, Flavio said that duplex to me looks great. Something like that in Grandview, Washington areas around 300K.
That's pretty
yeah.
cheap because
Yep.
around me it's 750.
Yeah, 135 and those, I mean, the 3-bedroom units was something I really liked about this one because they're going to rent for a premium. Like, I think it was Rentometer said like 13 to 1400 market rents on this, which is really, really good. So this was a great cash flow deal and the added benefit that's pretty much turnkey.
Yeah, I got a roast. I got to get my son up soon. If anyone has more questions, but I don't know. Quickly, there was this interesting one Steven sent me. He was kind of looking at. I see it's getting a lot of attraction. It's kind of a sneaky one because it's not an official duplex, I think. But did you get? I sent it to you text and an email, Liam, just now. But it has 2 kitchens, so it's not. I don't think it's a maybe zoned as a duplex, but I like that it has the parking, has a detached parking garage. I think it was. Yeah, it was pretty
too.
interesting. So if you want,
Maple was a good street in Ambridge, I think too. Let's see. So it doesn't list it as a duplex, but it doesn't mean it's not. So typically if the zoning or the setup is a little bit vague, what I'll go and do, well, this is in Beaver County. So I'll go to the Beaver County real estate portal isn't nearly as detailed as the Allegheny County real estate portal. So sometimes we can't get great information on here, but the goal is that like you pop in here, let me see. And like right here on that one, 4 family. That's the use code for this one. Is it's clearly a multi-unit, clearly a 4-plex. So that's kind of the goal. It's like if you cross-reference this website with the MLS, you can kind of get an idea of like how is this actually zoned. And these aren't a perfect science either. Sometimes you do need to check with like the municipality to see like do they have occupancy permits on file to make sure it's like properly or legally a duplex. So that's something to look out for, but we make our clients aware of. But this one, 538 Maplewood. Let's see if it does list anything. Yeah, so this says 2-family dwelling detached.
Yeah,
which is interesting.
this is because I know in the list, the description, I think it mentions 2 kitchens. But I like that it has the garage also. But yeah, it was kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, it looks rent ready for the most part to me. They did some interesting staging here. Look at that. Look at this and then look at that. That's funny. Yeah, so 2 kitchens there. Okay. It says detached too. Yeah. Oh, okay. Gotcha. So there's a separate structure here. So this should have no issue then. With a separate structure, there should be no ambiguity about whether this is, legally 2 units. Ambridge is pretty easy to work with that too. So like I would obviously just call the municipality or the code enforcement office up and be like, hey, do you guys have 2 units on file for this
I wonder
address?
if that's the garage.
And they'll kind of let you know.
I think there's another picture of the view from there.
It might be. Oh yeah, so it's a 3-car garage in the back. Okay.
Yeah.
3-car garage in the back is really nice too. I mean, that's a really nice benefit. Either tenants will love that and like they'll stay longer, probably lower turnover because they have this much extra space, or you could rent these 3 garages out and get some extra cash. But yeah, it looks like maybe this is the upstairs unit right here. Because you do have the 2 kitchens. I mean, yeah. So sometimes you just see things listed incorrectly, to be honest, which can be a really good like opportunity. Like there's some good deals to be had on just people that don't list something properly. So if they meant to list this as a duplex but didn't, then that's huge. So Yeah, that's just one where I would look into with the code enforcement office is be like, hey, is this a legal duplex or not? Because if not, you'd probably have to go for like a zoning variance and get permission to legally rent that second unit, the upstairs unit. But if that can be done, then yeah, that's that can be a
All
great
right. So
deal.
before we wrap things up and maybe get a final verdict on Curtis on how Liam did, we'll answer Jim's maybe final question. It says, so Jim is asking, let me just, yeah. So definitely thinking of off-market wholesale deals are going to be a better option for my numbers. Just seems to play out better. Any thoughts, Liam, on that?
Yeah, I sent Jim 2 deals from a wholesaler recently that we work with a lot, that we have really good relationship with. And I think for Jim's strategy, looking for something that maybe is a little bit undervalued, needs some work, wholesale deals could definitely be the way to go. Um, he's more experienced with knowing what goes into renovations and contracting and stuff like that, and more willing to do that. And that kind of aligns with a lot of what we see with wholesale deals. So that could definitely be an
Yeah.
option for sure. And we work with a lot of good wholesalers. We're plugged in with some guys that we do a lot of deals with who love working with us because we have like good buyers. So we see a lot of great wholesale deals as well that we send on around.
So even the on market one that we had looked at, it looked like you're going to make net $800. So I don't know how much better you want it to be than
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I mean the wholesale deals are typically more value add. You have less disclosures, usually less access going in. You can't do inspections, so that has to be factored in terms of like you have to be able to make the proper assumptions about a property in order to go into it with a little bit less information. Um, but the wholesale deals are typically more value add. You're probably going to have to do some work or some stabilization, budget a
Mhm.
little bit more for rehab, depending on the property. Um, we don't see as much just like turnkey great rentals coming from wholesalers. It's usually more of a distressed situation. Uh, but it depends on the wholesaler and what they kind of have and coming from their marketing stuff. But yeah, we transact a lot of wholesale deals too.
Yeah, but that one that we just looked at too, I was kind of thinking of Jim in a sense because like he was looking for something where he could maybe leave stuff in one unit, right? Rent out part of it, and has the garage
Yeah.
to where, and he
The
could if
garage,
he could
yeah,
even split
actually,
it to where he could leave his truck and tools, and the tenant. Yeah,
it's a great point. And he would have less issues with the zoning there if he was kind of going to like kind of occupy that one or like use it for himself. Like he wouldn't technically need, I don't think, like pure duplex zoning. It'd kind of be like a
yeah.
mother-in-law suite that doesn't really have to, it could kind of fly under the radar. But you're right. Yeah. The garage and the extra space is super important to Jim from my understanding. So that could definitely be a good one. And Ambridge is a solid neighborhood, kind of on the up and up, but still cash flowing really well and good numbers.
All right. Well, I gotta get my son up. I think this was a lot of fun. I will be back Friday with the Deacon. Alex Deacon will be on live with me on Friday. He is another Pitts. He's the owner at Mace Property Management, Deacon Hoover. So kind of who Jeremy folks and Liam work under a little bit, but wealth of knowledge. He'll be here on Friday. And
So what's the
yeah, what's
verdict,
the verdict?
Curtis?
It's,
When you buying?
it's definitely piqued the interest there. It kind of helped us see the actual like the numbers in the houses themselves. It's not like the Gary, Indiana, where you're like, oh God, okay, well, this is kind of a danger.
Yeah,
But those all look like very nice, and they've sold and kind of see what the rents are. So kind of giving you a different perspective.
helps frame things a little
Yeah.
bit better. Yeah.
All right. Charles sent me something to look at on my phone. It looks like this is what they bought right before the ORAT event, and this is what Carrie started parents. Okay, so I'll maybe next time I'll put that on, and that's kind of where their channel has. You know what? I'll throw their channel. Do I have it? Yeah, here it is. Their channel. Here's their YouTube channel. So those of you that are still here, please go subscribe to their channel. But I guess next time I'll try and show that property, and that's kind of where the vision maybe for their channel started from. But this is good, and hopefully we convince you a little bit or got you leaning towards
Yeah.
Pittsburgh, Curtis. But Liam, thanks for always doing this. Great
Yep.
information.
Thank you guys. Good to meet
Yes,
you,
Yep.
sir.
Curtis.
And everyone, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you folks all on Friday. All right, everyone. Bye.
Cool.
Did it end? How come I'm pressing end?
Oh, it still says live.
I know, I'm trying to. What the heck? It's not working. The end button is not working. What the hell? Let's see. All right, I don't know. Wonder if we just jump off. Will it end? I doubt it. What the hell?